Like, why y'all do that, bro? It's like the track is just locked drum. It's too much. You need to, calm down. So if there's one thing that I've learned through the years, especially when it comes to mixing, is don't overdo anything. I've made a video about less is more before, where I spoke about the best tip that I ever got was to understand that less is more. And I just thought back to when I was like really obsessed with, like, firstly, autotune. I used to autotune every vocal. Like whenever I do a recording of any vocal, I used to like throw on autotune there and autotune the hell out of that. And I would have some other like like I would see vocalists become nervous because now they're not feeling the autotune and they want to tell me like, X, the autotune is a bit too much. Can you please take it out? But I'm having such a good time and having fun with the autotune. But I'm overdoing it. I was really overdoing it because, I was having fun. It was back in the day when, T-Pain was a thing. Autotune was really, popping up and blowing up. So you would autotune everything. But I didn't understand that with autotune, you can do some pitch correction, but just a little bit, just to correct a little bit, because not every vocal is like on pitch and on key all the time. So I just didn't understand that, you can do it a little bit less and not, just add it in a subtle way. It's like adding, how do you call it, like seasoning to food. You don't like add too much salt or add too much pepper or whatever seasoning you add to your food. But just a touch, just to give a little bit of flavor really goes a long way. So it's the same thing with mixing when it comes to things like autotune, compression, EQ, and so forth. So I used to overdo it when I would add like autotune to vocals. And the next thing is compression. I always used to overdo my compression when I started to have fun with compression and understand how everything works out, especially the threshold, the ratio, and the attack and release. And the more I understood it, the more I started to like overdo it, either on vocals, on snares, like I really love an over compressed snare. It just slaps for me. Like I've done it in like a video and people were like, yo, wow, that snare is really sounding nice. I really enjoy that. But I used to over compress vocals and I used to add too much compression even on my master bus and on my mix buses and sausage out whatever sound that I'm compressing. And that was a problem. And I've always noticed that a lot of amateurs also do the same thing of over processing their sounds, especially with compression, because what they do is that they add a preset and then they don't tweak that preset. Or maybe they add compression and they don't play with the dry and wet knob, to find a balance, just to add a touch. So the key with compression is, what you want to do is you want to add like a lot of compression and then you start to bring it back down, to a comfortable place. So you want to hear it like like really sausage out the signal, and then you just start to, gradually release it a little bit and let it go, because you need your track to have dynamics and you want your track to breathe. So you can only do this if you add a little bit of a compression. This is where I also moved on to parallel compression, and it blew my mind away. I was like, oh wow, this is a clever way of using compression. I don't have to like add it onto the sound like all the way, but I can create a new channel and add compression there, and then that signal can come into my main to the channel that I want to affect, and then just have it, just add a little bit of a tinge of a compression, just a little bit, like maybe 10% of that other like over compressed signal, and add it to my dry signal. And then, it adds a little bit of a nice texture to it. So over compression and overdoing things is what most amateurs do. And I just thought I'd share this because I'm sure you overdo something when you're mixing or when you're working. And I've seen it a lot of time. Like even now you have a lot of people overdoing the log drum, bro. Like, why y'all do that, bro? It's like the track is just log drum. It's too much. You need to, calm down. I know it's fun, but you don't want to do too much in a track. You want to let your track breathe, especially with compression. Compression is just something you just use to control, the dynamics a little bit, not like too much. If you feel like there's too much of a difference between the loudest point and the lowest point, then, use compression just to, squeeze it down a little bit so that it's a little bit level, not all the way though. Like sometimes when we watch a movie and we use a VLC player, it actually has a compressor. Some movies have, like when they have dialogue, like when they're talking like this, the volume is really low. But then when they start shooting guns, it all of a sudden gets so loud, it's like jarring. So, I have to put on a compressor so that when the action starts happening, it's not too loud. And, I understand it now. Play around with compressors and all these effects you use to find a good balance where you're not overdoing it, but you're adding enough to just add a subtle effect to control your dynamics. Don't just throw a compressor or an effect on without intention. That's where I feel like a lot of amateur producers, they fail. They just throw in effects for the sake of throwing on effects. Dude, I promise you, when I am online and I watch some other producers, like the effect chains, just by looking at them without even listening to the music, I can tell, like, wow, it's a mess. Like, it is a mess. And that's the thing I've learned over these years, that, you want to do subtle additions or add an effect in a subtle way, especially compression. I mean, you don't want to sausage out your track. Obviously we have a plugin called Sausage Flattener, but you just want to add a little bit of that, flattening, just so that your track is a little bit more consistent, so that the dynamics are not overly squashed, but you still have a little bit of room to breathe. It allows your instruments to really translate nicely, and so that even if it's like an area where maybe your kicks or your drums come out, your track can still breathe and can still be free. That'll be like on your master bus. Even on vocals, if you really want to have your vocals like really slappy, like, in the rap kind of thing, because obviously rap vocals, you would want them to be a bit more tighter. You just have to be really careful to try it out and maybe go a little bit overboard and then bring it back down, and then just bring the mix back down to like a comfortable place. That way you can overhear the compression and then bring it back down. Just like, let's say with this video, I can add a lot of color and then I start to bring down the color and, find like a comfortable place where I feel like, okay, the color is at the right place here. It's not too much, it's not too little, but it's just a good amount. We can do this with music, but you can't do that with food. If you add salt, it's done. If you add too much salt, it's done. There's no taking away that salt. But with digital music production, we can add a lot and we can remove. So you can do whatever you want when it comes to that. But the one thing that I'm trying to say is most amateurs overdo these things, and you don't want to overdo these things. Again, less is more. So if you want your music to sound really good, make good music. You won't need to add so much effects or overdo a lot of these effects. It might get really addictive when you overdo it. You're like, oh, I just want to throw on compression and auto-tune and all this. It sounds whack, bro. It really sounds whack. You just want to add subtle things to the track and add these subtle effects and, just do it subtly. Even when it comes to EQ, you don't want to boost your EQ or even cut more than like 3 dB or 4 dB. Cut at least a dB or 2, a dB or 3, that's good enough for an EQ. If you like cutting or boosting more than 4 dB, that is like too much. That is a lot. But anyways, music doesn't have rules. You do what you want, what sounds good. But anyways, we have references of other people's music that we listen to anyway. And you want your music to sound like what everyone else's music sounds like. So that's why to use a reference as a guide is a good thing. And when you listen to your track and you listen to someone else's track, someone that's really professional, you don't want to hear too much of a difference when it comes to tonality and all that. Although we do understand that some of them are like in $1 million studios, but we're all using the same plugins right now. We all have the same plugins. A compressor is a compressor. This FL Studio compressor is the same as this Waves compressor. They're all compressors. They all do the same thing. So whatever you have is totally fine. Just find a way to use it and not overuse it, if that makes sense. I hope you found that really interesting. But anyways, I'll check you guys out in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. I'm X and I'm out. Peace.